Well, keep eating your dessert. I know I almost got through my chocolate dessert, and if you're like me and you're a chocoholic, you're not going to pay attention to me until you finish your chocolate. So good evening, everybody. Hopefully you're enjoying your dinner tonight. And I can kind of see around the corner a little bit. Oh, I guess there's a picture up here, so I can still see you. A number of years ago, my wife and I became acquainted with Opportunity International, and that was back in 2002. And since that time, we've been increasingly involved with Opportunity, and it has become a very special to myself and my wife and our family over that period of time. I've been involved, as many of you have been, I'm sure, with a lot of nonprofit organizations. I've sat on the board of more than 15, or more than I want to count, nonprofit organizations over the years. Started 3 of them. And when I retired as CEO of United Stationers, I gave a lot of thought to which ones I wanted to be involved with going forward. And I concluded that there's only one that I really wanted to be involved with in a significant way. And that one was Opportunity International. So why? Why is that the case? Well, there are a number of things that Opportunity does that I found not only unique and not only special, but very powerful. First, they had a remarkable track record. Second, they had a very effective business model that's evolving. Third, they had a huge vision, bringing 20 million people into the job market by 2020, affecting 100 million people. That's not a small vision, okay? It's not a small task. So if you join this organization, you really can say, you are changing the world. You're making a big difference. And then the fourth reason was leverage. And let me talk about that. What do I mean by leverage? And this organization has more leverage, and it's getting more all the time, than any other one that I had pleasure of working with. The first, as you know, they do something that's much better and more powerful than handouts. And to borrow from proverb, they teach clients how to fish, right? So they help people earn a real and sustainable living. Their loans to clients are paid back and then reloaned again and again, okay? But given that the loans are averaging something less than $200 a loan, and you add to that the fact that each loan not only affects that individual, but we know affects at least 5 other people. And that's how we get from 20 million jobs to 100 million people. So you really have a lot of leverage there. Your donations to Opportunity have a much bigger impact than they would to any of the other organizations that I'm familiar with. So that was the first reason, first leverage. Second, their approach has what I would call a ripple effect. The best way that I know to break the cycle of poverty and move people from a state of desperation to one of hope and eventually fulfillment is essentially by helping them get jobs, educating their children, providing health. And by doing all of that, you move them from being potential recruits for terrorist organizations to people who are functioning members of our world society, okay? The third reason is that Opportunity is currently embracing some new initiatives that allows it to access social impact capital markets to leverage even further donors' contributions, to dramatically expand our capacity to transform lives around the world. So more to come on that, but that's another point of leverage. And fourth, I believe that by doing God's will, doors open in our lives. I don't know how, don't know why, but it does. And opportunity is living proof of doors opening on a regular basis. So, a number of years ago, my wife and I took our 2 children to Nicaragua on an insight trip, like many of you have been. And for me, it was a real eye-opener to see opportunities work firsthand and personal. The first thing I learned, and maybe I should have understood this, but the people that they were helping were not in extreme poverty because they lacked an education, although they did, because they lacked incentive or motivation or the will to change their lives. They had all of that, maybe except the education. What they missed was access to capital and a little bit of help in helping them on how you use that capital to create a business. And he didn't realize that $200 could change a life until you saw it in action. You know, you could hear it, but then you didn't realize, how does that really work? The second thing I learned was when you saw their faces and you talked to them and you looked into their eyes, you saw that these people were proud of what they were accomplishing. They had transformed their lives. They were now feeding their children. Their children were going to school. They had a smile on their face. Okay? They had hope for the future. And eventually, they had dignity, a great sense of dignity and self-worth for what they were doing and accomplishing. Huge transformation. And the third thing that I saw was actually through the eyes of my 2 children, because they watched all of this, and they couldn't quite understand it. They had trouble getting their arms around it. How could these people who have so little be so fulfilled, be so happy, be so hopeful about their future, and be proud of what they've done? And so they learn the value that it's not what you have, but it's what you do with what you have that makes the difference. And that by itself was certainly worth our trip. So, I get the pleasure of introducing the panel here. Our next 2 guests are going to further explore our work and our clients. Our goal tonight is to give you an overview of the unique ways Opportunity International is investing in the 12 million clients we serve across the developing world. We've brought together 2 experts to share insights on our areas of focus. And I am certainly delighted to be able to not only introduce them, but let me say one other thing as sitting on Opportunity's board. Over the 12, 13 years I've known Opportunity, I am even more excited today about Opportunity's future than I have ever been before. And these 2 people will help set the stage for why I'm saying that statement. So Vicki Escarra, Global CEO of Opportunity International, good friend of not only mine, but I think probably almost everybody sitting in this room. I can tell you we are so lucky to have Vicki as our CEO. What a difference she brings. Her background, as many of you may know, is that she brings a business perspective to her nonprofit work from her 30 years in business at Delta Airlines, where she rose to be the chief marketing officer, and at one time was responsible for $15 billion in revenue and some 52,000 employees. Vicki was also CEO of Feeding America for 6 years, where she established partnerships with leading corporations, increased fundraising by over 300%, and transformed the organization into a $1.2 billion powerhouse and the nation's largest domestic hunger relief organization. No small accomplishment. She received the prestigious Skills to Succeed Award from Accenture and the Committee of 200, and the Four Freedoms Medal from the Roosevelt Institute. Vicki was also named among America's top 50 most powerful and influential executives by the nonprofit Times for 3 consecutive years in a row, and is regularly quoted on international media as an expert on poverty reduction and community development strategies, particularly for women. Since becoming global CEO, she has increased Opportunity International's visibility and expanded its services to help people around the world break the cycle of poverty, transform their lives, and strengthen their families and communities. Most recently, she led the restructuring of the organization's worldwide operations to unite 8 institutional offices under one global banner, and let me tell you, that was no small feat. Second panelist, Dave Tolmie, also a good friend, senior partner of the Edgewater Funds and Chicago-based equity firm with $1.4 billion in committed capital. He also serves with me on the Global Board of Opportunity and chairs Opportunity International's U.S. Board of Directors. As a board member, he has been instrumental in expanding the organization's reach to help more people around the world. Dave was also CEO of YesMail, which he led through a successful IPO and subsequent sale. Previously, Dave was Senior Vice President of Operations for Bally Total Fitness, overseeing the company's $650 million in revenues and its 13,000 sales and operation workforce. Prior to this, Dave worked as a consultant with McKinsey & Company in New York. Dave's civic leadership extends to a number of prominent organizations, including several Edgewater portfolio companies, a number of prominent organizations, civic leadership, and he sits on the board of directors of the Executive Committee of the Field Museum of Natural History. He's also chairman of the Faraja Fund Foundation, which supports the Faraja primary school children with physical disabilities in Tanzania, Africa. So welcome, Dave. And we're also fortunate tonight to have Mike Flannery, Fox 32 News political editor, to help us moderate tonight's discussion. With more than 3 decades of reporting on Chicago politics, Mike probably has the most upfront and personal inside knowledge of the city and state politics. He grew up in Washington, D.C. and graduated from Georgetown University, spent 7 years writing about politics and labor for the Chicago Sun-Times, and then another 30 years as a political reporter and editor for CBS 2 Chicago before joining Fox Chicago in 2010. So please join me in welcoming Vicki Escarra, Dave Tolmie, and Mike Flannery.
Thank you very much. I'm terribly self-conscious to be speaking at all in a room that holds Dr. Martin Marty, one of the great, profound thinkers of our time, and I just am delighted that he's here this evening. I was asked for permission for a few seconds to just tell a story about micro-lending that I saw. In 2006, I went to Kenya with then Senator Obama and his wife, Michelle, and at 7:30 on a Sunday morning, we ended up in Kibera, the slum that now holds about 1 million people on the grounds of a former British Army base dating back to the colonial period. And there were several clients of this micro-lending operation there, and one of them that I ended up doing a story on was a young mother, and talk about a micro loan, it was $5. They gave her $5, and her plan was to go out and buy matches, then resell them on a markup, and she was doing several things. It was one of the several things she was doing to feed her family, and when we talked, it was clear that the need to repay the $5 was a big motivator. And there was this pride that she had that just came through, that she was getting approved for a loan. I tell you, if she had been buying a Bentley for $100,000 and getting approved for that. She couldn't have been prouder. And it's a dynamic model. It's a powerful, powerful model that even functions at that level. So, well, let's start with Vicki. And so tell us, Vicki, about the clients, what you do, and what you've done in moving the organization.
So, good evening, everyone. It's great to be with all of you and welcome you into our world. So, you know, the fun thing, Mike, about, well, one of the many fun things about my job, which I happen to think is the best in the world, is that we've had every speaker talk about all the statistics around opportunities. So everyone's come up and really, as Dave and I were laughing, has taken all of our material. So we're thinking of new material, and that's good. So clearly, we've been in the market for a little north of 40 years. We've actually placed over $9 billion of loans to clients, which is huge. We're in 28 countries. We serve close to 13 million people. 94% are women. The repayment rate's 98%. I mean, all the things that we've been talking about. But I want to talk a bit about the heart of the organization for a second, because that is really a big part, and I want to tell a story about a young woman that I met when we were in India with our board. And we were in the slums of Delhi. We just had a board meeting, and many of us were out calling on clients and meeting with them. And at the time, our board chair was Carly Fiorina. She's moved on to bigger things. She certainly moved up in the polls, and that's not a plug for Carly. She's a good friend. But anyhow, I was with Carly, and we were visiting this group of young women, and we had to climb up ladders to get to the top of the roof where they were having their meeting. And so we were interacting with them as we typically do, Mike, and we were asking them what they needed from us to make their jobs easier and to make their lives better. So, it was a group meeting, and it's something I think Opportunity does really well, and that is around innovation through listening to what clients need most. So, long and short of the story is this one woman stood up. Her name was Denise. She was about 24 years old. Beautiful saris, and there were about 30 women in the group. And she said, "I'm going to tell you my story." And so Carly and I said, "We want to hear your story." And she said, 3 years ago, I went to my husband. They were living in a village. They moved into Delhi. They were at the bottom caste of the pyramid in India. And she said, I went to my husband and said, "I want to start a business." And he said, "You cannot start a business. It is not acceptable in our culture." She said, "Well, I'm starting a business." Then they sent the mother-in-law in who said, "You cannot start a business. It is not culturally acceptable. And, our family, you cannot start a business." And she said, "I'm starting a business anyhow." Then they sent the father-in-law in. So they sent the whole family in telling Denise she could not start a business. And she started a business with an $80 loan. And she said, "Today, my husband, mother, and father-in-law all work with me in our business," which I love. I'm glad you guys like that story, because then we climbed up some more ladders and we met her whole family. So here's a woman who's 24 years old. Has been living in poverty. She's employing now 20 people, and their business is sewing car seat covers, which is a big business in this part of India. And she said, "And what I need from you is more money. I want more money. I've repaid all my loans on time. I want more money." So I tell you that story because the stats are enormous, and we get lost in them. But the heart of our work, and the reason we're all so excited about talking about Opportunity, is because the people we meet are simply amazing. And I do believe they have the ability to change the world that we live in today.
Well, Dave.
Thank you.
Very well said. Thank you. Well, let me reiterate one of the numbers. 20 million jobs, really? Really by 2020? Come on.
Yeah, let me talk about that not only about 20 million, but why jobs at all? And there's so many organizations looking at this big issue of global poverty. We've heard 2.5 billion people living in under $2 a day. And through the nonprofit stuff that I've done, including Entrepreneurial International, I've been to what people would call the third world a couple dozen times. And I've returned to Tanzania because of our involvement in the school there that was mentioned, that Dick mentioned. And I've really gotten to know people. And in getting to know them, I've quit thinking about them as those people. That this idea, and it can be kind of cheap talk, well, it's just like us, or they're but by the grace of God, go I. They really, these are moms and dads who love their kids, who, when they're hungry, it hurts just like it does when we have an hour before we, miss a meal. And when their children are sick, they grieve over their children. And they really are. I really believe that they are just like you and me. And we talk about how all people are created equal, and I believe that, and I know we all believe that. But the reality is that opportunity is not created equal. It's geographically constrained. We are so fortunate to be here where we have the opportunity, and it's to that cause that we are called to do something to love and serve the poor. And so what do we do about it? And we've spent a lot of time talking about how do we describe that, and a great expression of what we do is that at Opportunity, we believe that dignified work, jobs, is the foundation for people to transform their lives and the lives of their families and the health of their communities. It's about the opportunity to have dignified work. It's not aid, it's not a relief program, it is capitalism, grassroots capitalism, giving people access to capital, basic training, and an opportunity to use their own skills, their own initiative, their own hard work. And it's on that basis that we believe that this is sustainable and will make a difference, because people are earning their way out of poverty, not receiving it from somebody else. And so the businesses, Mike, just as you said, that these people are creating are so small. And that's why this works in the poorest parts of the world and not here. For a loan of under $200 on average, but even $5 in the case of the woman with the matches. A loan of $75 can enable a woman, I've seen this, to go to the market every morning. She's up at 5 o'clock to get vegetables, to go to her little cook place, not her kitchen, her little cook place, and cook up soup to sell to construction workers at lunch every day. Or the farmer who's got a couple acres and has been farming the same way that they farmed for the last many, many generations. I saw this in Nicaragua, a great visit there, where just showing that farmer how to use really quality seeds and providing the capital for the seeds and the fertilizer and the farming techniques to quadruple the output for those acres, to enable him to buy more acres, to buy a truck, to employ more people. It's amazingly small things, but it makes a difference. And so that's what we're doing, one person at a time, totaling up to 13 million, 14 million, going to 20 million. And that's why we're focused on jobs. And there are a couple things I love about our model. That's what really drew me into Opportunity, which is that it's sustainable. These are real jobs that people do every day. Now, they don't get to clock in and clock out. There's a great story that somebody told me that we're talking to this individual guy who had his own little business. They said, "How many days a week do you work?" This tells us so much. He said, "I want my family to eat 7 days a week, so I work 7 days a week." That's the way this works. He's working so his family can eat. And he'll work every day because he's got a skill and he's got a business. And we get those loans repaid and use that money over and over again. And what do these people do? Particularly the women. We've talked about women because they're better at business. You know what women are a lot better at is making sure that money goes into their families and not into their pockets or into the bar down the street. Because unfortunately, that's the reality. It's a tough place to live, and it's tough for men to live with that. Women have the big picture in mind. But they then feed their families, they educate their children, and that creates the next generation of breaking the cycle of poverty. The children are educated, which all kinds of indices, and we're building a whole business around education finance because that's the surest way to ensure that next generation doesn't live in poverty. So there are a couple little statistics I want to just share, even though we've talked stats. As a private equity guy, I can't avoid it. So the World Bank, credible source, has recently observed that through the work that organizations like ours are doing, we're just doing our part, we're not the only ones doing this, but that the World Bank projects that by 2030, the percentage of the world living in less than $2 a day, which today is 30% of the globe, can be reduced to 3% by the year 2030. Picture that. I mean, in our lifetimes, extreme poverty could be history. It's not a fantasy. And we're all doing our part, one person at a time, maybe 20 million people at a time. You heard the multiplier effect, times 5, 100 million people, times their children, the next generation, and it's great. A couple of quotes that I just wanted to make reference to, because this is kind of a well-kept secret. Nobody knows about Opportunity International. One of the reasons that we wanted to have everybody here tonight, particularly those who haven't been involved, is say, wow, this is something, this really works, and this is pretty big. The UN expert group on poverty statistics is quoted as saying the following: microfinance stands as one of the most promising and cost-effective tools in the fight against global poverty. I'm not a big UN fan, but I do like the Wall Street Journal. And a recent editorial in the aforementioned Wall Street Journal made reference to a great book called The Conservative Heart by James Brooks. And James Brooks in that book said, capitalism has saved a couple of billion people, and we have treated it like a state secret. Let's get the word out. It's what we're doing. We're on the front lines every day, planting the seed of jobs and watching them grow.
Vicki, I know you're proud of the innovative ways and some of the new techniques that the organization's using. Tell us about that.
Sure. So I'd begin by saying the founders of Opportunity International, one Australian, one American businessman, were actually entrepreneurs and innovators. So the very DNA of the organization is all about innovation, all about change, all about being a little bit ahead of the cutting edge of what's happening in business. And so I want to begin by just really owning that. That is who we are. We are innovators. And I could give you so many examples, but I won't. I will give you just a couple, and one comes to mind because we began inside Opportunity 7 or 8 years ago this idea that we could provide microinsurance to actually provide health insurance, life insurance, crop insurance to people living in poverty. And of course, everyone laughed and said, there's no way you can do that. And we launched that company and spun it off 3 years ago. Today, MicroInsure has a run rate of adding 1 million clients a month to the business. They're now serving 16 million clients, I believe. David, I'm looking at you. And they were just voted by the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times, your favorite periodicals.
Must be true.
Must be good. Must be really good, as being the most innovative nonprofit of the decade. So I want to mention that.
Wow.
Yeah, which is big. I mean, it's a big deal. It's also a big deal to be serving people living in poverty with insurance, because our model is also loan, savings, insurance, keeps people out of poverty, and training. And then one other quick thing, and that is we're really proud of what we're doing in the digital space. There's more to do, But if you look at the continent of Africa, 80% of the people that live in Africa have a cell phone. And so we serve people in rural communities, farming communities. We serve a lot of educators, one in the room here tonight. And so what we've been able to do by using digital technology and really sign people up for all of our products and services allows us to extend our reach, Mike. It also allows us to reduce our transaction costs from about $10 a person to less than $1. So we're going to be on the cutting edge. I'm looking at lots of innovators and entrepreneurs around the room tonight that are on our team, so you can count on us to continue to move that forward.
That's great. I know that the notes here reflect that, I know we're in limited time, but the agriculture finance, education finance, health, the other pieces that the organization is contributing to as well, and so many of those are filling, a function. I mean, drought, a farmer, right? People would literally thousands would starve to death when the crops would fail in situations, and you're obviously helping with that. So Dave, who is the organization?
Well, we have a fantastically committed staff. We've talked about, I think, another number, 19,000 employees at Opportunity International. It's a lot. And why is that? It's because we serve people in the poorest parts of the world, and to make that more complicated, in the most rural parts of those remote countries. And so getting to those people takes a lot of committed people on the ground in 28 countries around the world. So in order to do all that we do, we have to raise money. And we raise capital for a few reasons. One is to fund the financial and business services. We raise money from donors that is equity capital. We access the capital markets to leverage it with debt. It's a pretty sophisticated operation. And so that becomes the capital that's loaned. We also have to pay for that infrastructure of all the people on the ground. It's not inherently a profitable model. It's becoming more profitable through things like the innovation that Vicki was talking about to reduce the costs to service those loans through mobile technology and others. But that's investment spending, particularly as we go to new parts in these rural areas. And we are expanding geographically all the time. It's like opening a new branch or something like that, or a new office. You need to start, and then eventually it breaks even. And so we're constantly reinvesting. And then we are investing in innovation. You made reference, Mike, to some of those innovations in the areas of mobile technology, agri-finance, edu-finance. And I think we may have missed putting in a plug for the summit tomorrow here at the Drake, which is to have seminars and breakout sessions to learn about all these things. So if you showed up and you didn't know about that tomorrow and said, well, if I'd known about that, I would have stuck around. It's not too late. We'd love to have you come back tomorrow, starting at around 8:30. So find somebody on the way out if you'd like that information. So, donors. We serve people in 28 countries, but the reality is that most of the money is raised here in the U.S. We have to do it here. And about half our money comes from corporate sponsors and foundations. Thank God that there are corporations who care enough and or who have foundations that are set up to find places to make an impact. And it's a really impressive list of partners who are giving to us in large amounts. The Caterpillar Foundation, Cargill, Gates Foundation, MasterCard Foundation, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America. I could go on. And we're proud of those affiliations. They are an endorsement of what we do, because when we get a contribution, a commitment, which is in the sometimes tens of millions of dollars over the long term from these partners, we are vetted thoroughly. Believe me, Dennis Ripley and his team know all about how thorough that is. So we're grateful for those partnerships. Those of you who are here who run companies may be in a position to have your company be part of that, and we'd love to have those kinds of conversations. The other half of our money comes from individuals, and it's people who believe in our model. They have confidence that what we're doing, while it is a messy business, is one that is really making a difference to the tune of tens or hundreds of millions of people being lifted out of poverty. We've got so many committed donors here. Our Board of Governors, this is their event. They've allowed us to expand the event to bring in new people. I know the Board of Governors were asked to stand earlier, so I won't do it again, but I just want to thank all of those Board of Governors members who are really committed, both with their money and with their time, to being an important part of this. And then also our Board of Directors is here as well. So we need individual donors. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Tonight's about education, but there's no doubt we can't accomplish what we want to do without compassionate donors.
Absolutely.
Mentioned that it's a messy business, and I would imagine down on the ground in some of the countries where opportunity is, Vicki, that you can, it's hard to measure things. So how do you, what are the metrics the organization uses? How do you make the case that you're transforming lives?
Yeah, so I'd begin by saying a more general statement. I think actually excellent nonprofits today are learning how to measure impact. The really great ones do. And the reason is donors require that. They're requiring it more and more, that we have the ability to really show them how their money is going to work. And so at Opportunity, we're fortunate because we are in financial services at the core of what we do, and so we have a lot of data. And so we can look at what's actually happening with loans being repaid, all those kinds of basic things. But we've broadened our scope and have a tool that's really cutting-edge technology that is called social performance management. And it allows us to ask our clients questions, 20-plus questions around, what were you using the loan for? Obviously, you repaid it. Are you hiring people in the market? So growing your business. What are your children, are they going to school regularly? Are you feeding them healthy food? Do you have access to water? Are you living in a suitable home? So we really have the ability to track what is happening with our clients, not only financially, but how they're living their lives. And I'll mention one other thing to keep this answer a little shorter, Mike, and that is we're really fortunate because we announced a partnership with the University of Chicago, one of several great universities here in Chicago, which is one of the reasons we moved downtown. But a really great partnership with the University of Chicago, and their two lead researchers and then the whole staff will be working with us with this tool on the ground over the next 3 years to actually follow the lives of our clients, so we can go back to our donors and say, Vicki got a loan, this is what happened, this is how her life's improving. She looks like she's really, making it. And so that is really important it's important to us because we want to know, do we have the right tools in place to really serve people? That's what we're about. And it's very important to the donor community.
And I know that U of C is just the gold standard in measuring that kind of thing. There's nobody better at it, really, than
And they came looking for us. So how about that?
Wow.
I
Well,
know.
congratulations. Tell us a bit more about the move to Chicago, 30 seconds.
Well,
In Oak Brook for so long.
Sure.
And
happily. So I'm an Atlanta girl, even though I don't sound like it anymore, which my mother harasses me every time I go home. I've totally lost the accent. Who wouldn't want to be in Chicago? I mean, it is a fabulous place. It's a fabulous place. Go Cubs. I'm shamelessly going to say that. But no, who wouldn't want to be in Chicago? It is a magnificent city. If we had great weather, we'd have 30 million people living here, but we don't. So that aside.
my house would triple in value.
So would mine. That aside, the facts are really clear about why we moved downtown. 400 major corporations are in the city of Chicago. 26 of the Fortune 500 companies call Chicago home. Many major foundations and institutions are here, and they're just now a block or two away from us. To recruit great talent is really easy being here. And it's a dynamic place, and we think our focus around job creation is really what the focus is around the city. And so we think it's a really great fit.
Well, I'm getting a signal that it's
I know.
time to open things up to questions.
I just want to say one more thing.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Because I know we're out of time, but I wanted to talk about as it relates to Chicago.
You can tell them.
As it relates to Chicago, we're kicking off something tonight called the Chicago Entrepreneurial Challenge.
There you go.
Something like that. I made it up. I can't remember the name.
Sounds good, Dave. I'm with you.
Thank you. This is the city that
I think it's the Chicago Global Entrepreneurship Challenge.
It's a mouthful. But here's the deal. Do you want to make an impact? We can talk to you about a cost on average $360, call it $400, make the math easy, to provide the capital required to create a job. The job goes on and creates benefits to the whole family and the next generation and so on and so forth. But our goal is for this community of Chicago, all of us and all of those who we can go tell about this, to support the creation of 10,000 jobs and to raise $4 million by the end of 2016 in order to do that. And so we're up to that challenge. I believe it, and Vicki and I are going to work our brains out to do that, and I know that so's our staff, and we hope everybody else here will too. We believe in it so much that my wife Tracy and I and Vicki have each pledged $500,000 in matching funds toward this effort. That's $1 million. We're well on our way. So we hope that all of you will consider how you might play a role individually, how you might play a role with your company, with your friends, with your church. There are lots of ways to do this, and we're not asking you to do that tonight unless you're so inclined, but we want to work with you as a team to accomplish the goals to make this kind of global impact. So I couldn't resist that little program. Vicki.
So I think you guys have the floor. We're going to take questions here for Dave or Vicki. If anybody wants to pledge $500,000, we'll take it.
We forgot to plant the questions.
That's right.
Right.
How much of what you're doing is going back into Chicago and Illinois? I know you do an awful lot globally, but I'm curious what you do locally.
So I'll take that.
Please.
So we all of our work is focused internationally. We are an international nonprofit, and as I think Dick was saying, you know, it's and others. Harry said this too. It's important to give, certainly locally. I mean, I've grown up, spent most of my life being very involved in what we do locally in the community that I've lived in, both in Atlanta and here. I also think it's a really important time in our world that we invest, most especially in ensuring that kids are educated and that we provide jobs for people that are our friends around the world. So, but all of our work is internationally focused. Yes, of course.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I offer also that you're opening, I think you're opening the minds and the hearts of all you connect with in Chicago so that they might feel a part of this bigger world they're all living in. And that actually, feeling of philanthropy and love is something that spreads throughout a city as well. So in that way, you're growing the city, and of course, you're hiring all these people to come into Chicago. Huh?
There you go. Thank you, Mary Lynn.
You know, it's getting kind of late, so maybe what I would suggest is rather than hear any more from me and Vicki as we get very close to bringing the evening to a close, we'd like to hear very briefly from a few of our clients in a brief video, and then Harry Kramer will wrap us up. So if we could roll the videotape, I just wanted to say that. And thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about this tonight.